Criticism over government red ink mounting following a recession-induced spending binge. President Obama is proposing a new law that would give the White House wide authority to limit federal spending and those so-called congressional earmarks.
Well, already Republicans are blasting the president's plan. House GOP leader John Boehner saying, quote, "This is no substitute for a real budget that reins in overall federal spending."
Our next guest now knows something about fiscal responsibility. Carly Fiorina was the one-time chief of tech giant Hewlett-Packard, now a Republican candidate from California for U.S. Senate. She says Washington must show the discipline to cut. Welcome, Carly. Good to see you. Thank you for coming on.
It's great to be with both of you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, you talk about the discipline to cut. Okay, let's move beyond that. That's a great slogan. But where, how, and what?
Well, the 2010 budget that President Obama presented to Congress grows federal government employees 14.5% a year for each of the next 3 years. All of this talk is just that, talk. There is well-documented hundreds of billions of dollars worth of waste and abuse in this federal government budget. We have fat, unaccountable bureaucracies. Of course there are places to cut. Your previous panel was talking about Greece. Well, let me tell you, Greece is not so far away from the city of Los Angeles, which isn't growing the economy, which has huge pensions and benefits. It's not so far away from the state of California, where government has gotten too big, taxes have gotten too high, regulations have gotten too thick, and we are destroying jobs. There are only two things we can do now: grow the economy and cut federal government spending.
But Carly, we have put into place the beginnings of a new kind of social welfare system, particularly as it regards health care spending. Is it going to be necessary to turn this health care bill around to prevent us from falling into the European trap?
Well, I think so, and I called for the repeal of that bill the day after it was passed. But I think we have a new opportunity now. President Obama established this Budget Deficit Commission. I was against the formation of that commission from the outset because I think it's a Trojan horse for tax increases. And indeed, as soon as that commission was formed, everybody started talking about value-added taxes. Nevertheless, President Obama went into the Rose Garden when he announced this commission and said, everything is on the table. Well, Mr. President, repeal of this health care bill needs to be on the table because it would add to our budget deficit by probably $1 trillion, and it does nothing to make health care better quality or lower cost. Yes, we have to repeal this health care bill.
Well, but Carly, everything on the table, the VAT tax was talked about, but also raising the retirement age was also discussed. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to do before we ask the American people to sacrifice even more, let's get the federal government to do its job. So let's cut taxes to make sure that small businesses, family-owned businesses, innovators, and entrepreneurs can create jobs. They create 2/3 of the new jobs in our country, and we are making it so difficult for them. By the way, you mentioned Silicon Valley before, but of course buried in this financial reform bill are a lot of things that are going to make investment in startups much more difficult, not easier. But let's also ask the federal government to do its job and to hold people accountable. My goodness, we now know that the SEC, in addition to failing to stop the Bernie Madoff scandal, we have people making $225,000 a year there watching porn 8 hours a day, and they're still employed. We know that MMS, Materials Management Service, that are supposed to be overseeing BP, we have executives in that service that are in bed, literally, with oil executives. This government is not accountable, and we need to understand how each and every dollar of our taxpayer money is being spent, and we need to cut out the waste. And there's $500 billion worth of waste in this budget.
By the way, there's waste in a lot of different governments in the United States, including state governments, some of whom, including the state of California, where you are, want a federal bailout. Would you oppose any federal monies going to help out California or any other state?
I oppose bailouts because of whomever, whether it's General Motors, Chrysler, or the state of California, because what a bailout does is it allows someone to avoid the tough choices that have to be made. Tough choices need to be made in California. The tough choice is to cut government spending. The tough choice is perhaps to limit the kinds of pensions and benefits that public employee unions get. yes, there are tough choices that need to be made, and they don't always require us to lay off firemen and teachers. Let's cut the waste. Let's cut the bloat. Let's force accountability. We have no idea how our federal government tax dollars are being spent. Washington, D.C. is spending our money. I'm running because I'm prepared to hold Barbara Boxer accountable and get into Washington and ask the tough questions.
You're prepared to hold people on the other side accountable. How about working with some people on the other side who might have good ideas? You know, we just saw Bob Bennett lose his seat because he was actually reaching across the aisle in certain regards, and he wrote an op-ed over the weekend and just saying this is really upsetting because if you talk a good, tough game and then you get into Washington, does that mean that you can't share ideas with the other side of the aisle? Are you willing to at least share ideas?
Of course. But what it does mean is you can't sacrifice core principles. So my core principle is no new taxes. It's why I signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, because I think Washington, D.C. has demonstrated that they will spend every dollar we give them and then some. Of course, we have a water problem in California. I will reach across the aisle to Senator Dianne Feinstein and work with her to get the water turned back on in the Central Valley if a federal judge doesn't do it first. But I think taxpayers, voters, now want to know where people stand. And where I stand is there are only two things we need to be focused on right now. What does it take to grow the economy? And that means cutting taxes and cutting regulation. And what does it take to cut federal government spending? And that means we go after fraud, waste, abuse, incompetence, and corruption. And we have never gone after any of that in a serious way.
You have the endorsement of Sarah Palin. In some states, that is a big boost to a candidate's perspective. In other states, one wonders, do you think that might rub Californians the wrong way?
Well, I'm very proud of that endorsement. Sarah Palin has called me a common sense conservative who can actually beat Barbara Boxer. I will tell you that it has Republican primary voters here in the state of California extremely excited. I'm excited and honored to have received that endorsement. But I'll tell you something. I've traveled all across this state, and whether they are Democrats, Independents, or Republicans, the people of California are all now members of a single party. They are members of the Had Enough Party. People have had enough. I've had enough. That's why I'm stepping forward. We've had enough of unaccountable government. We've had enough of incompetent government. We've had enough of people who don't know anything about the economy trying to fix the economy. Let entrepreneurs, innovators, small business owners, and family-owned businesses do what they do best and create jobs.
Well, you ran a business, and certainly we like business people in government because they understand what it means to follow a budget and to cut costs when it's necessary. What did you learn at Hewlett-Packard, Carly, that you think really puts you in a good position to be a senator?
Well, first, I've created jobs. I've met a payroll. I've managed billions of dollars worth of expenses, and I've cut billions of dollars worth of expenses. I know why jobs are leaving the state of California. I know why jobs are leaving this country. And I know exactly what it takes to get jobs back. Let's cut the key taxes. Let's make sure that we give a new business, for example, a 5-year tax holiday if they will put their facilities and their jobs here as opposed to someplace else. But I also know you show me $1 billion that no one's accountable for, that no one scrutinizes, that no one's responsible for making sure every dollar is spent wisely and well, and I'll show you hundreds of millions of dollars worth of waste. That's exactly what we have in the federal government. Let's start by putting every agency budget up on the internet for every taxpayer to see. We're going to be outraged by what we see. And then let's ask a different set of questions in appropriations hearings, like, why are you spending so much, not why do you need more?
Carly, you look great. How's your health?
My health is fantastic. I have beaten cancer. I am one of the lucky ones. I am filled with enormous gratitude, and that battle gives me strength for this one. I'll tell you what, after chemotherapy and cancer, Barbara Boxer doesn't scare me a bit.
On that note, Carly, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carly Fiorina, Republican senatorial candidate from California. Good to see you, Carly.
Thank you.
Now let's go to Robert Gray in the newsroom for today.